I said this really adds an extra level of work to the class.
Hi guys, and thank you for joining me today. Today you all should be excited because we're all going to make the switch from plastic bottles. According to the Earth Policy Institute, from an article from the National Geographic titled Water Bottle Pollution Facts, in 1976, Americans drank 1.6 gallons of bottled water per person per year. Approximately 30 years later, that number has increased to 30 gallons of water per person per year. So you may ask yourself, how does this affect me? Well, for 3 reasons: health, environment, and cost. There are toxins called BPA that I found from the FDA, which is the U.S. government's organization that's dedicated to protecting our health. They state, and I quote, "Recent studies provided reason for some concern about potential effects of BPA on the brain, behavior, and prostate gland of fetuses, infants and children." And again, this was taken right from their website. They did a study titled Update on Benefol A and the Use of Food and Contact Applications in January of 2010. So today we're going to discuss the results of ingesting toxins, the cause of this problem, and how we can solve it. So first, let's talk about health issues. Bottled water is not safe to drink and store. The National Resource Defense Council, the NRDC, actually conducted a 4-year study, and they found this very information to be true. Approximately 22% of the water that they tested contained contaminant levels that exceeded strict state and health limits. They found hormone-disrupting phthalates leached into the water stored for 10 weeks. Now you may think, that's not, how does that affect me? I'm going to drink my bottle of water sooner than 10 weeks. But if you think from the time that liquid actually enters your bottle to transportation to the store, how long did it sit on the warehouse or on that store shelf? When I bought my bottle, how long is it going to take for it, when it sits in my house, the time I actually consume it? 10 weeks really isn't a lot of time. So the NRDC actually found that consumers, and I quote, "Consumers shouldn't assume bottled water is any more pure or safer than tap water." They found toxic plastic compounds and actually found that you're actually ingesting bacteria. And I actually found this was interesting because in that same article from the National Geographic, they discussed how an elementary school did an experiment. And what they found was the level of bacteria when you reuse plastic water bottles was so high. If you had gotten that water from the tap, they would have actually had to issue a boil water advisory. Now you can help with this process by washing your bottled water with warm water and soap. However, when you wash it and you're kind of crinkling your water bottle, what you're doing is you're actually releasing those toxins back into it. So it's not exactly a very effective process. They also found that what this chemical does is it actually increases diabetes, obesity, cancer, advanced puberty, and disruption of neuroendocrine function in the development of young children. Now let's look at environmental issues. Bottled water creates pollution in more than one way. It takes millions of oil barrels per year to produce bottles used for the water. Also, when you're transporting it from the source to stores, you're releasing thousands of tons of carbon dioxide into our atmosphere. Now you may say, well, I don't add to that. I'm recycling my plastic water bottle. And if you do, that's great, because that means that your water bottles are one of the 13% of the 29 billion bottles that do end up in the recycling stream. It will be recycled to make such items as clothing, carpeting, decking, playground equipment, new containers, and new bottles. So what happens to the other 87%? Well, it's going to end up in U.S. landfills, and we see that millions of tons actually end up there. Or it will be incinerated. When it's incinerated, you're actually releasing toxic products like chlorine gas, heavy ash-containing metals into our atmosphere. Now, some people may have the attitude that, oh, I don't care. I'm not going to be around centuries from now to see a pile of garbage. Or I'm not going to be around 100 years from now to see what happens when the ozone layer is gone. But what about cost? I know that's very important to a lot of people. So, according to the National Geographic, Americans actually drink more bottled water than any other nation, equaling approximately 29 billion bottles a year. Now, it takes 17 million barrels of crude oil to create all of those bottles. Ironically, this is the same amount of oil that it takes to consume 1 million vehicles on the road for 1 year. If you take your bottle of water and you fill it 1/4 of the way through, that's actually how much oil it took to produce that one bottle. Now, we all know oil is very expensive. So really, how is this a cost-effective method? So in conclusion, bottled water costs 240 to 10,000 times more than tap water, which just costs pennies to the gallon. So what exactly was that made ingesting plastic so dangerous? Well, it's a base chemical called bisphenol A, or BPA, and it's used to make our plastic beverage containers, resin in the lining of cans. So when we think, how would I see that? Well, baby formula, there's like a little plastic silicone lining inside of the can. That contains BPA. It also can be found in dental sealants, carbonless paper receipts, and other common household products. Now, exposure to this toxic chemical from the Journal of American Medical Association in 2008, they published an article where Dr. Saul and Dr. Myers did research on bisphenol A and the risk of metabolic disorders in 2008. So the Journal of American Medical Association took this study and they actually looked at it as being the first major study that examined effects associated with BPA. Their data reports significant relationship between BPA, CBD, type 2 diabetes, and liver enzyme abnormalities. So here, from the National Geographic, in an article titled, "Are Plastic Bottles Safe to Reuse for Drinking Water?" they actually found similar results, that mixed plastics and PET plastics are the most common. They're going to release this chemical called BPA into the plastics over time, especially when introduced to sunlight, heat, and of course storage time. The Harvard School of Public Health has shown exposure to BPA can interfere with reproduction development in animals, and it's linked to CBD and diabetes in humans. So it's a very toxic chemical. As a matter of fact, Canada has actually declared BPA to be a toxic chemical, requiring a limit to human and environmental exposures. So what does our government say? Well, studies by the FDA and the Environmental Protection Agency have shown adverse effects or harmful effects of BPA on the brain, reproductive system, and metabolic systems. Okay, so if adults with increased levels of BPA are at a higher risk of metabolic diseases, then infants, children's, adolescents, and pregnant women and fetuses would be a high priority for 2 reasons. The first reason would be exposure to BPA during development poses greatest risk for harmful effects on fetus and infants. They're most susceptible because of their smaller body sizes and their limited capacity to metabolize this toxic chemical called BPA. The second reason being increase in the use of this product within the last 30 years has been linked to an increase of obesity and type 2 diabetes in our children. So here we can see that it increases postnatal growth, it adds to advanced puberty, and this is disruption of neuroendocrine function. BPA can alter the programming of genes, which is a process called epigenetic programming, which and later in life can result in metabolic diseases and cancers. Wow. So given the cause of certain types of cancers, diabetes, fertility issues, and growth development in young children, something clearly needs to be done. And it's so simple. We can use stainless steel water bottles instead. They're safe, they're durable, they don't leach, and they're available in all sizes, shapes, and colors. Now, if you're not around your stainless steel water bottle, you can easily go into a store and buy water from a glass bottle or another beverage from either a metal container or a glass container. So the FDA has actually stated that they will work to encourage and facilitate changes that minimize exposure to BPA, and avoid other adverse impacts on food and safety quality. So specifically for infants, what they're doing is they're supporting industry's actions to stop producing BPA-containing bottles in infant feeding cups. They're also facilitating the development of alternatives to BPA lining. So they're coming up with some other base chemical that they can use to make plastics. And they're also recommending that things like formula be taken off the shelf so we can minimize exposure to our infants. So a lot of people would still be opposed to this, saying, well, I like to use my water bottle. It's easier available, it's safer, it's lighter, it's recyclable, and it's cheaper. Actually, plastic water bottles are more popular for all of those reasons. You've been convinced and perceived of its purity because of marketing executives. They're doing a really good job convincing everybody of these facts. As a matter of fact, I want to leave you with one thought. If you purchase one stainless steel water bottle and reuse that for the rest of your life, that's all you need to purchase. One stainless steel water bottle, you can reuse it as many times as you need to. Again, it's durable. It's a one-time cost. It's better for the environment, and it's better for yourself and your family. I want everybody to stop using plastics containing these toxins. And again, as stated from that article from the Journal of American Health in 2008, and that article titled Bisphenol A and the Risk of Metabolic Disorders, from the Environment Canada website, Canada says, quote, further evidence of harm should not be required for regulatory action to begin the process of reducing exposure to BPA. So I encourage you all to think about this and just please start making the same changes in your life. Thank you very much.